Restaurant turns away Latina customer, not knowing she's the owner of the franchise. On a humid afternoon in early summer, Sofia Ramos, a young woman in her late 30s, pulled up to a restaurant that was part of a chain she had recently purchased. It wasn't the most famous franchise in the area, but it was popular enough to attract a steady stream of customers and had solid growth potential. Her company had expanded rapidly over the last few years, and she was proud of how far she had come. Sofia, a Latina woman born and raised in the U.S., had overcome countless obstacles. Growing up in a predominantly white neighborhood, she faced discrimination at every turn, from classmates at school to the people who ran the local businesses. But Sofia had always pushed through, determined to make a mark on the world, both for herself and for her family. It wasn't just business that mattered to Sofia. She believed in the power of community, in making sure her businesses were ethical, inclusive, and positive contributors to the neighborhoods they operated in. With this restaurant, however, she found herself confronting an entirely different battle, a fight for basic respect. As she parked in front of the bustling restaurant, she had no intention of announcing her presence. She just wanted to sit down, enjoy a quiet meal, and see what the experience was like as an ordinary customer. The franchise, though still young in some locations, had quickly grown, and Sofia made it a point to visit them occasionally to get a feel for what was working and what wasn't. Today, however, would be different than any visit she had made before. Walking into the restaurant, Sofia was immediately struck by the welcoming yet casual atmosphere. The walls were painted in soft, earthy tones, the light from the windows spilling into the room, and the smell of freshly grilled food wafting through the air. As she approached the hostess stand, the young woman standing behind it barely acknowledged Sofia as she walked up. Sofia smiled, feeling a little bit of nostalgia for the early days when she, too, worked as a hostess at a local restaurant. "Hi there," Sofia said, her voice light and friendly. "A table for one, please." The hostess didn't immediately make eye contact. She glanced at Sofia briefly and then looked at the reservation book. She shifted on her feet and, after a long pause, said flatly, "Sorry, we don't have anything available right now. It's going to be a while." Sofia felt a twinge of confusion, but she didn't want to make a fuss. "Oh, that's fine. How long is the wait?" The hostess seemed unbothered by the question, fiddling with a pen as she glanced over the restaurant, clearly uninterested in offering any real response. "I don't know. It could be an hour or more." Sofia was about to say something when the hostess glanced over at a family walking in behind her, a family that happened to be white. The hostess immediately brightened, her tone changing completely as she greeted them. "Hello, we have a table ready for you, right this way." Sofia stood there, taken aback by the overt display of preferential treatment. She knew exactly what was happening. She had seen it before in so many places. Sofia stood quietly for a moment, unsure of how to proceed. The hostess had already led the white family to a table, but Sofia was still standing alone at the front, her presence now clearly being ignored. She could hear murmurs behind her, likely other customers waiting for their seats. She knew the restaurant's policies: first come, first served, with a slight preference for reservations. But something about the way she had been treated felt off. She decided to make her presence known. "Excuse me," Sofia said, her tone firmer this time. "I've been waiting here for quite a while. I'd like to speak with the manager." The hostess hesitated, visibly uncomfortable. The manager is busy right now," she replied, but Sofia could hear the falter in her voice. "I'll wait," Sofia said simply, crossing her arms. The hostess, clearly unsure of how to handle the situation, reluctantly nodded and disappeared into the back of the restaurant. Sofia waited for a few moments, her mind racing. She could feel the quiet judgment in the room, the eyes of customers flicking over to her, noticing the tense situation. But she remained calm, refusing to let herself be dismissed. After what seemed like an eternity, a man in his mid-40s, wearing a black apron and a manager's name tag, emerged from the kitchen. He was well-dressed, but had a certain stiffness about him that indicated he wasn't accustomed to dealing with complaints. "Good afternoon, ma'am," he said, his tone polite but distant. "I understand you've been waiting." Sophia smiled coolly, maintaining her composure. "Yes, I've been waiting, and I'd like to ask why you just seated that family without even acknowledging me when I've been here longer." The manager glanced over his shoulder, as if assessing the situation. "Well, we seat based on reservations, and they had one." Sophia raised an eyebrow. "I didn't make a reservation, but I've been standing here, waiting for service, and I don't appreciate being ignored." The manager's gaze shifted uncomfortably. "I'm sorry if you felt overlooked. It's just that we were trying to accommodate everyone as best as we could. There's a lot of people in line today, and we're doing our best." Sophia's patience was beginning to wear thin. "I've been in this business a long time. I know how reservations work. But what you're telling me is that because of my appearance, I'm not given the same level of respect as the others who walk in here. Isn't that right?" The manager hesitated, the words sticking in his throat. "I'm sorry if you feel that way. It wasn't intentional." Sophia could see the lack of understanding in his eyes. He had no idea who she was, but she wasn't about to let this slip. Sophia took a deep breath and made a decision. She wasn't just going to walk away, letting this interaction stand. She had worked too hard for this business to let ignorance and bias undermine everything she stood for. "I'm the owner of this franchise," she said calmly. The manager froze, his eyes widening. "Excuse me?" "I own this entire restaurant and several others in the region," Sophia continued, her voice firm. "And I was treated like a second-class customer today. Do you have anything else to say for yourself?" The manager's face turned red as the realization sank in. His previous arrogance quickly turned to panic. I had no idea. I'm really sorry. I didn't mean for it to come across that way. Sophia held up her hand, stopping him. "It's not just what you meant to do. It's what happened. And what happened here is a reflection of the biases that still exist in our society, even within our own business." After a tense but productive conversation with the manager, Sophia decided to sit down for her meal, but not before having a frank discussion with the rest of the staff. She explained her experience, her feelings of being dismissed, and how this kind of behavior, whether intentional or not, undermined the values she had worked so hard to instill in her business. The manager, embarrassed and shaken, apologized multiple times, promising to do better. Sophia wasn't about to let this one mistake define him, but she knew it was an important learning moment. This kind of prejudice could not continue unchecked. Later that day, Sophia sat in the corner booth, reflecting on the experience. The manager's apology, while heartfelt, wasn't the only thing that mattered. She knew that change had to start from within, not just from a single encounter, but from a collective effort to confront bias and ignorance at all levels of her business. As she finished her meal, Sophia thought about how far she had come, not just as a business owner, but as a person who had learned to confront the uncomfortable realities of a world still full of division. And she knew this was just one of many lessons she would have to teach, both to herself and to those who worked for her. Over the next few weeks, Sophia held staff meetings and workshops focused on diversity and inclusion, ensuring that the mistakes made that day wouldn't be repeated. She shared her story, her journey, and her personal experiences with discrimination to help her employees understand the real-world impact of unconscious biases. The manager, once embarrassed by his actions, became one of Sophia's most vocal advocates for change. Together, they created new training materials for future hires, emphasizing that their customers, regardless of background, race, or appearance, deserved the same level of respect and dignity. Sophia knew that her work wasn't done yet, but as she looked around the restaurant, seeing her staff interacting with customers with newfound understanding and empathy. She felt hopeful that her business could truly be a force for positive change. It wasn't just about serving food. It was about serving people with care, respect, and equality. After the incident, Sophia decided to take immediate action to ensure this kind of bias would not happen again. She scheduled an emergency staff meeting at all her locations, inviting not only employees from the restaurant in question, but also from her other franchises. Sophia stood in front of a room full of faces, some uncertain, others eager. She began the meeting by sharing her experience from earlier that week. The room grew quiet as she recounted her encounter, giving voice to the hurt she had felt and the frustration she'd experienced when being dismissed simply for her appearance. "I'm the one who built this franchise from the ground up, and I'm the one who has fought tirelessly for respect and equality in this business," Sophia said, her voice steady but full of emotion. "But I'm not immune to discrimination, and neither are you. That's why we're here. We need to confront biases, both conscious and unconscious. And we need to ensure that no customer feels what I felt last week." She paused to let the weight of her words sink in. "We're not just in the business of food. We're in the business of human connection. And when we treat people with dignity and fairness, we serve them better than any meal we could ever cook." A young waiter raised his hand, looking uncomfortable. "I didn't think that kind of thing could happen here. I thought we were all open-minded." Sophia smiled, nodding. "I thought so too, but we're all human, and we all have blind spots. The important thing is that we see them, confront them, and work toward doing better every day." After the meeting, Sophia handed out materials on implicit bias, diversity training, and the importance of inclusivity in customer service. She brought in external consultants to lead future training workshops. Over the following weeks, the restaurant staff began to embrace this new culture of openness, feeling empowered to address their own biases and work together to ensure that every customer felt welcomed, regardless of their background. Despite the positive atmosphere in the restaurant after the training, not everyone was eager to embrace the new vision. A few employees, particularly one of the kitchen staff, still harbored deep-set prejudices that they weren't ready to confront. Carlos, a line cook who had been with the franchise since its early days, wasn't as receptive to the changes Sophia was trying to implement. One evening, as Sophia walked through the kitchen, she overheard Carlos talking with another cook. "I don't get all this diversity talk," Carlos muttered. "It's just a bunch of fluff. People should just be grateful for the food we serve." Sophia froze in the doorway, listening carefully. She had been walking through the kitchen to check on the evening's operations, but hearing this, she knew she needed to address it head on. Taking a deep breath, Sophia walked toward Carlos. "Carlos," she said, her tone calm but firm, "we need to have a conversation." He stiffened, realizing she had heard everything. "I've worked hard to build a place where everyone is treated with respect," Sophia continued. "I understand you may not agree with everything we've implemented recently, but the reality is, this business thrives because we treat people like family, not because we just serve good food." Carlos shifted uncomfortably, but didn't respond right away. Sophia continued, "We're a team here, and for this to work, we all need to be on the same page. If you're not willing to respect the people who come into this restaurant, regardless of who they are, you're not going to be a part of this future. I'm asking you, as one of the senior members of this team, to reflect on the message we're trying to send. It's not just about what's on the plate. It's about what's in our hearts." Carlos looked at Sophia, a conflicted expression on his face. "I don't know, Sophia. It's just a lot to take in." Sophia smiled gently. "I get it. Change is hard. But that doesn't mean it's wrong. Let's talk more about it. I'm here to listen." The conversation wasn't resolved that night, but it was a step forward. Over the next few weeks, Carlos started showing up for the diversity training sessions, though begrudgingly. Slowly, Sophia noticed a shift in his attitude. He started interacting with customers more positively, and his energy in the kitchen improved. It was clear he was still grappling with his personal biases, but the seeds of change had been planted. While Sophia's work with her staff continued to show promise, she found herself increasingly overwhelmed by the pressure to lead the change she had set in motion. The demands of running a growing business, coupled with her personal mission to make a positive impact on the community, weighed heavily on her shoulders. One evening, after a long day of meetings and consultations, Sophia sat in her office, staring at a pile of paperwork. Her phone buzzed with messages from various stakeholders, suppliers, business partners, employees, and community leaders. Each message seemed to demand her attention, but there was only so much she could give. She leaned back in her chair and closed her eyes for a moment. The exhaustion in her body felt heavy, and her mind raced with all the challenges ahead. How could she balance her business growth with her desire to make a lasting social impact? How could she ensure that the changes she had set into motion would be sustainable in the long run? Her thoughts were interrupted by a knock at the door. It was her assistant, Julia. "Sophia, the board members are waiting for you in the conference room. They're asking about the community initiatives." Sophia sighed, rubbing her temples. "Thanks, Julia. I'll be there in a moment." As she stood up, Sophia realized that this was the part of leadership she hadn't anticipated, the constant balancing act of staying true to her values while managing the expectations of those around her. The conversation with the board would likely be a tough one. Some members had been pushing for more traditional business practices, focused solely on profit, rather than the community-driven approach Sophia had championed. She made her way to the conference room, steeling herself for the conversation ahead. This was her chance to make sure that her vision for the restaurant's future, one that prioritized inclusivity and fairness, wasn't lost in the push for higher revenue. The boardroom was filled with a mix of people: investors, franchise executives, and key stakeholders. Sophia took a seat at the head of the table, meeting the eyes of the members who had been more critical of her community-focused initiatives. The conversation quickly turned to the future direction of the restaurant chain, with one board member, Richard, pushing for a more profit-driven model. "Sophia, I get that you want to make this a socially responsible business, but we're running a restaurant here. We need to think about our bottom line," Richard said, his tone sharp. Sophia took a deep breath. "I've heard that argument before. But here's the thing. I've built this company on the idea that we can be both profitable and socially responsible, and it's working. I've seen the impact of our community programs. We've increased our local engagement by 30% in the past year alone. But those programs cost money, and they don't always result in immediate returns," Richard countered. Sophia met his gaze firmly. "You want to see returns? Then look at customer loyalty. Look at the positive press we're getting. Look at the way our employees are responding to our new initiatives. We're investing in our values, and that's what's going to set us apart in the long term." The room fell silent as Sophia's words hung in the air. She knew this wasn't going to be an easy battle, but she had spent years fighting for a future she believed in, and she wasn't about to let anyone derail it now. "I'm not backing down," Sophia continued, her voice resolute. "We're going to continue investing in our community, our people, and our values. If that's not something you're willing to support, then maybe we need to reevaluate whether we're aligned in the first place." The meeting was tense, but in the end, Sophia's unwavering commitment to her vision began to sway a few of the board members. They could see that Sophia wasn't just running a business. She was building something bigger. Her employees, her customers, and her community were all part of a larger ecosystem that needed to thrive together. Richard and a few others reluctantly agreed to support the initiatives, acknowledging that Sophia's approach had merit. They didn't fully understand the long-term value yet, but they recognized her determination. As the meeting ended, Sophia felt a surge of relief. She had stood her ground, and she knew that this was a pivotal moment for the future of her franchise. There would be more challenges ahead, but she was ready to face them with the support of those who believed in her mission. Months passed, and the impact of Sophia's leadership began to ripple through the franchise. Not only had the restaurant's reputation as a socially responsible and inclusive business grown, but employees and customers alike began to feel the difference. Sophia's commitment to confronting bias, treating people with respect, and empowering others had become the core of her brand. As the business continued to grow, Sophia made it a point to mentor other entrepreneurs, particularly women and people of color, who dreamed of following in her footsteps. She knew that her success wasn't just about profit. It was about creating a legacy that would continue to inspire future generations. The restaurant chain became a symbol of what was possible when a business focused on more than just bottom-line profits. It became a place where respect and fairness were at the heart of everything they did, and where customers and employees alike felt valued and heard. Sophia had built more than just a successful business. She had created a movement that proved that doing the right thing wasn't just good for the world. It was good for business, too. Sophia's restaurant chain had been growing steadily, and with the success of her inclusive policies, she began to attract attention from local media. A prominent news station in the city reached out to her for an interview, wanting to highlight her as an example of a business that prioritized both social responsibility and profitability. At first, Sophia hesitated. She was not one for the spotlight, and the idea of being featured in the media made her feel uneasy. But she recognized that this could be an important opportunity to further her mission, to share her story with a broader audience, and to inspire others to take similar steps in their own businesses. On the day of the interview, a camera crew arrived at one of her busiest locations. Sophia greeted the reporter, a woman named Lisa, with a friendly smile. The team set up their equipment, preparing to film. "So, Sophia," Lisa began as the cameras rolled, "your restaurant chain has been in the news recently for its efforts to foster diversity and inclusivity. What inspired you to take such a strong stance on these issues?" Sophia took a deep breath, her thoughts returning to the early days of her journey. "I've been in the restaurant business for a long time, and I've seen firsthand how difficult it can be for certain groups to feel valued. Growing up, I didn't always feel seen or heard. I knew that if I was going to build a business, it had to be one where everyone, no matter their background, felt like they belonged." Lisa nodded, clearly impressed by Sophia's candidness. "But some people argue that businesses should focus on making money, not politics. What would you say to that?" Sophia paused, feeling the weight of the question. "I would say that running a successful business isn't just about profit. Profit is important, yes, but if your customers and employees don't feel respected, that money doesn't mean much. When people feel valued, they'll return to your business. And that's the kind of growth I want for my company." The interview continued, but as the conversation unfolded, Sophia began to notice a pattern in the questions. The media had a tendency to focus on her background, the struggle she had faced as a Latina woman, and the criticisms that some had of her inclusive approach. They kept asking about challenges, about resistance. It felt as though they were framing her success as an exception rather than the rule. By the end of the interview, Sophia felt both proud and frustrated. She had shared her story and her vision, but she couldn't shake the feeling that the media was trying to portray her as a minority success story, instead of a business leader who was simply doing what was right. It didn't take long for Sophia's interview to stir up controversy. While many customers and employees celebrated her approach, some of her competitors, especially those in the more traditional corporate restaurant industry, didn't appreciate her message. A few weeks after the interview aired, Sophia received an unexpected phone call from one of the larger chain restaurant owners in the area, Daniel Harris. Daniel's restaurants were well established, with a loyal, older customer base. His company had been publicly critical of Sophia's efforts to intertwine social justice with business practices. "Hello, Sophia." Daniel's voice was as smooth as always, but there was an underlying tension. "I watched your interview. Very inspiring. You're getting a lot of press these days. I just wanted to reach out and give you a friendly word of advice." Sophia braced herself for whatever was coming next. "Go ahead." "You're walking a fine line, Sophia. Mixing politics with business? It's a gamble. Customers don't want to be lectured about inclusion or diversity when they come in for a meal. If you keep pushing this woke agenda, you'll alienate your core customers. Trust me, you don't want to make enemies in this business." Sophia's heart raced as she listened to the dismissive tone in his voice. She could hear the judgment in his words. But she had faced this type of criticism before, and just like before, she wasn't going to let it break her resolve. "Thank you for the advice, Daniel," Sophia replied, her voice calm and confident. "But I'm not here to play by your rules. I'm here to create something better. I believe in my business, and I believe in the people we serve. If that makes me an outsider, so be it. But I won't compromise my values for the sake of convenience." Daniel's chuckle came across as hollow. "Well, let's see how long that lasts. I've seen businesses like yours come and go. It's just a phase." Before she could respond, he hung up. Sophia sat in her office, staring at the phone. She knew that this was just one voice in a sea of opinions, but she couldn't deny the nagging feeling of doubt creeping in. What if he was right? What if the pushback was too much? But Sophia quickly shook off the self-doubt. She had fought too hard to get where she was, and she wasn't about to let a few naysayers derail her mission. As Sophia continued to navigate the challenges posed by her critics, something incredible started happening. Her message was spreading. Customers, both regulars and newcomers, began to stand up for the values Sophia had instilled in her restaurant. One evening, Sophia was at another location when she overheard a conversation between two regular customers, an older couple who had been coming to her restaurant for years. They were speaking quietly, but loudly enough for Sophia to hear. "You hear about that interview Sophia did?" the woman asked, her voice filled with admiration. "I think it's amazing what she's doing. Businesses should be about more than just making money." Her husband nodded in agreement. "I've been coming here for years, and I've never seen a place like this. They treat people with respect, no matter who they are. That's why I keep coming back." The woman smiled. "I like that she's making a difference. We need more people like her in charge." Sophia felt a warm rush of gratitude flood through her. It was moments like these that reminded her of why she was doing this, to make a tangible, positive difference in people's lives. Soon, similar stories began emerging from across her customer base. Loyal patrons shared stories of how they felt welcomed, how they saw changes, not only in the restaurant's environment, but in the community's sense of unity. Social media posts flooded with praise for Sophia's stance, and some customers even started rallying behind her, organizing campaigns to highlight how important diversity was in the business world. Sophia realized that while she may have critics in some corners of the business world, she had a deep well of support from the very people she was trying to serve. It was proof that her business model wasn't just a fleeting trend. It was resonating with the values of the community she had built. Months later, Sophia's restaurant chain reached a major milestone. She had successfully expanded into 3 new cities, and her franchises were now regarded as leaders in the industry for ethical practices and social responsibility. In celebration of this success, Sophia decided to host a community event that would both thank the people who had supported her and further strengthen the bonds she had created. The event was held in a large park near one of her locations, and Sophia invited local artists, musicians, and small businesses to set up booths. There was live music, food from her restaurants, and speeches from community leaders who had championed her efforts. As Sophia stood on the stage, looking out at the crowd of people diverse in age, race, and background, she felt a deep sense of fulfillment. These were the people who had believed in her vision. These were the people who had helped her get to where she was. A local high school student approached her with a bouquet of flowers. "Thank you for everything you've done," the student said, voice shy but sincere. "You've shown me that I can make a difference too, no matter where I come from." Tears welled up in Sophia's eyes as she accepted the flowers. This was the real reward, the impact she had made on others. It wasn't about the profits, the media coverage, or the criticisms. It was about creating a space where people felt seen, heard, and valued. Sophia's journey had been filled with challenges, but it had also been one of incredible growth, both for herself and her business. She knew there was still work to be done. That change would continue to require vigilance and determination. But as she looked around at the thriving, diverse community she had built, Sophia knew that her legacy would live on, not just in the restaurants she had created, but in the lives she had touched and the people she had inspired. Her phone buzzed again, but this time, it was a message from one of her mentees, another young woman, much like Sophia once was, starting her own business. "I did it, Sophia. I opened my own restaurant. And I'm going to make sure it's inclusive and welcoming to everyone." Sophia smiled as she read the message. This was the future she had worked so hard to build, one where every entrepreneur could thrive, and where every person could feel respected, no matter their background. Just as Sophia was beginning to feel like things were stabilizing, an unexpected challenge arose. The city government, under new leadership, decided to conduct a review of all local businesses to ensure they were compliant with new regulations regarding employee treatment and business practices. Sophia received a letter informing her that her restaurants would be included in the audit, and she quickly realized that this could be a pivotal moment. While she had always run her business with integrity, the scrutiny could still put her practices under intense pressure. There was also the fear that her competitors might try to use the audit to discredit her. The day the auditors arrived at her flagship location, Sophia was on edge. She greeted the team of 3 auditors, 2 men and 1 woman, who were clearly no-nonsense professionals. They wasted no time diving into the paperwork, asking for employee records, tax documents, and inspection reports. As the audit continued, Sophia couldn't shake the feeling of being under a microscope. Every decision she had made, from how she treated employees to the wage increases she had implemented, was being examined. The auditors even interviewed employees about their experience working at the restaurant. One of the auditors, a man named Greg, asked Sophia to sit down and talk. "Ms. Lopez, we've been reviewing your employee policies, and I must say, they seem to go beyond what's required by law. You offer paid family leave, health insurance, and a host of other benefits. Why take these extra steps?" Sophia smiled slightly. "Because my employees are the backbone of this business. If they're well taken care of, they'll perform better and be happier in their work. It's a win-win." Greg nodded, but his face was still somewhat skeptical. "You realize these kinds of policies might not be feasible for every business, right? Especially in a competitive industry like this. Some people might say you're overextending yourself." Sophia leaned forward. "I understand the concerns, but I believe in long-term growth, not just short-term profits. When you invest in your people, you create loyalty, trust, and a workplace culture that people want to be a part of. That's how you build something lasting." Greg didn't respond immediately, and Sophia could tell he was processing her words. After a long pause, he scribbled something down in his notebook. The audit took a full day to complete, and Sophia couldn't help but feel exhausted. The pressure of proving that her business model could withstand scrutiny weighed heavily on her, but she knew she had done everything with integrity. All she could do now was wait. 2 weeks later, Sophia received the results of the audit. The letter arrived early in the morning, and her heart raced as she opened it. The first paragraph was filled with technical jargon, but then she reached the conclusion, and a wave of relief washed over her. The letter commended her restaurant's employee policies, noting that they exceeded industry standards. The auditors also praised her commitment to community engagement and inclusivity. There was a mention of the difficulties some businesses might face in replicating her model, but the tone was overwhelmingly positive. Sophia let out a deep breath, feeling a weight lift off her shoulders. The audit had not only confirmed that her business practices were solid, but it also provided a strong endorsement for the values she had worked so hard to instill. That afternoon, Sophia held a meeting with her leadership team to share the good news. The room erupted in applause when she read the results aloud. "I knew we were doing things right, but this confirmation from the audit feels like a huge victory," Sophia said, a proud smile on her face. "It's a testament to all the hard work you've put in and the values we uphold every day. This is proof that running a business with integrity is not just possible, it's the way forward." Her staff beamed with pride, knowing that the culture they had worked to build was recognized on a larger scale. With the successful audit behind her, Sophia felt more confident than ever about her business's future. The positive media coverage from the audit gave her a boost, and soon, the opportunity to expand the franchise further came knocking. A large investor reached out with an offer to buy into Sophia's franchise and help fund expansion into other states. The investor had seen the buzz surrounding her restaurant chain and was impressed by the success of her inclusive model. Sophia spent several weeks weighing the offer, consulting with her mentors and board members. While the deal would give her the financial backing to grow her business even faster, it also came with the risk of losing some of the control she had carefully maintained over the company's culture and values. She called a meeting with her top leadership team, including her trusted general manager, Andre, and her head of marketing, Leah. "Do we take this deal?" Sophia asked. "It would allow us to expand much more rapidly, but I'm concerned that we might lose some of what's made us special. How do we grow without sacrificing our core values?" Leah, who had been with Sophia from the early days, responded first. "Sophia, you've always said that we put people first. And that's not just about our employees or our customers. It's about our community. If we can find a way to maintain that focus as we expand, we could scale up without losing what makes us authentic." Andre nodded in agreement. "We've built something real here. I think we can grow without compromising. But we need to be clear on our boundaries. If we're going to bring on investors, they need to understand that our mission is non-negotiable." Sophia smiled. "I agree. We'll take the deal, but only on our terms. We'll grow, but we won't lose sight of why we started this in the first place." With a renewed sense of clarity, Sophia moved forward with the deal, carefully structuring the agreement to protect her vision. She would maintain oversight over the brand's values and ensure that the franchise expansion would align with the company's core principles. As Sophia's franchise expanded, she saw an opportunity not just for profit, but to help others who shared her values. She partnered with several organizations that supported women and people of color in business, creating a mentorship program to help aspiring entrepreneurs start their own businesses. The program, which Sophia named the Empowerment Initiative, offered free workshops, networking opportunities, and funding for entrepreneurs who wanted to open businesses that focused on inclusivity and community. Sophia personally mentored several of the program's participants, offering her knowledge, guidance, and insights into building a socially responsible business. One of the women who came through the program was Mariana, a young Latina entrepreneur who wanted to open a coffee shop that would also serve as a gathering place for local artists. After months of coaching and financial support from Sophia's network, Mariana opened her business in the heart of the city. Sophia attended the grand opening, smiling as she watched Mariana cut the ribbon. "This is your moment," Sophia told her, pride in her eyes. "Just remember, build a business that reflects your values, and the rest will follow." Mariana hugged her. "I couldn't have done this without you, Sophia. You've shown me what's possible. I'll pay it forward, just like you." Sophia watched as Mariana began to interact with customers, offering them not just coffee, but a space where they could feel seen, heard, and valued. It was a full-circle moment for Sophia, realizing that the impact she had made on the world was multiplying. By empowering others, she was ensuring that her values would live on long after she was gone. Years passed, and Sophia's business became a symbol of positive change in the restaurant industry. As she sat in her office one quiet afternoon, looking at photos of her early days, the struggles, the late nights, the moments of doubt, she realized how far she had come. Her restaurants were now a staple in cities across the country, and her commitment to inclusivity and fairness had inspired countless others to follow in her footsteps. The Empowerment Initiative had helped launch over 50 new businesses, many of them run by women and people of color. Sophia's leadership had created a ripple effect, not just in her industry, but across the wider business world. Her phone buzzed with another message from Mariana. "We're opening a second location," the message read. "And I'm mentoring another young entrepreneur. Thank you for everything, Sophia." Sophia smiled, feeling the weight of her accomplishments. She had built more than a business. She had built a movement. And as she looked toward the future, she knew that her legacy would continue to grow, inspiring future generations of entrepreneurs to value people over profits and community over convenience. The journey had been long and difficult, but it had been worth every challenge. She had created something that mattered, a business that didn't just survive, but thrived because of the respect it gave to everyone it touched. Just when Sophia thought things couldn't be more successful, the restaurant industry was rocked by a massive scandal that began to threaten the reputation of businesses across the country. A well-known chain, a direct competitor to Sophia's restaurants, had been exposed for exploiting workers, not paying fair wages, and enforcing unsafe working conditions. News outlets were quick to pick up the story, and soon the public's distrust of large restaurant chains spread like wildfire. Many patrons began to scrutinize their own local dining spots, questioning the integrity of businesses in the same sector. Sophia's restaurants were caught up in the wave of backlash, even though they had been completely unaffected by the scandal. Critics began asking whether Sophia's business, too, was hiding uncomfortable truths. Was her success too good to be true? Despite knowing that her business had nothing to hide, Sophia realized that her reputation and that of her company would be tested. The public backlash from the scandal grew intense, with social media posts calling for boycotts, demanding transparency, and questioning whether any restaurant could truly be trusted. Sophia gathered her leadership team once again. She could see the concern in their eyes, and her own anxiety was palpable. This was a test of everything they had worked for. "People are scared," Andre said, his voice steady but concerned. "This scandal is hitting hard, and we're not immune to the fallout. How do we prove we're different?" Sophia thought for a moment, then stood up from her chair, her mind made up. "We double down on transparency. We take the lead in showing the world how we're different. We have nothing to hide, and now is the time to make that clear. We'll open our doors, every process, every policy, every document. Let them see what we've been doing all along." Leah nodded. Transparency, honesty, and compassion. "We can't back down now." Sophia took a deep breath. She knew that this was not just a momentary challenge. This was a defining moment for her company. The next steps would determine whether her business would rise or fall. In the wake of the scandal, Sophia made the decision to launch a full transparency campaign. She didn't just want to reassure her customers. She wanted to lead by example. She opened up her restaurants for public tours, allowing customers to see the inner workings of the company. She held live Q&A sessions with employees, where they spoke candidly about their experiences working for the company and the benefits they received. The media coverage was intense, but Sophia didn't shy away from it. She took to social media herself, sharing her personal commitment to running a business with integrity. Here's what we do every day to make sure our employees are treated fairly and with respect. Sophia posted in one of her videos. Here's why we don't just talk about inclusion. We live it. And here's how we do it better than the companies that put profits over people. Her team worked overtime to ensure that every piece of information, every document, was available for scrutiny. They uploaded employee contracts, safety inspection records, and wages for each location online. They hosted a live stream where Sophia and several staff members spoke about the values that guided the company. Customers were encouraged to ask any questions, and Sophia personally answered many of them. In the following weeks, Sophia noticed something unexpected. Her business saw a surge in positive feedback. Customers who had initially been skeptical were now applauding her commitment to transparency. Support for Sophia's restaurant swelled, and many of her competitors were now being called out for their lack of accountability. The crisis, which had seemed so threatening, ultimately ended up strengthening Sophia's brand. Her bold move not only diffused the negativity surrounding the scandal, but also reinforced her position as an ethical leader in the industry. Despite the successes, Sophia had moments where she questioned the cost of her achievements. One evening, after a long day of meetings and media interviews, Sophia sat alone in her office, staring out the window. The city lights twinkled below, a far cry from the quiet village where she grew up. The weight of leadership had never been more apparent. As her company grew, so did her responsibilities. Sophia was now overseeing hundreds of employees, managing investors, keeping up with new regulations, and constantly thinking about the future. The pressure was immense, and the loneliness that came with being at the top of the ladder was starting to weigh on her. She picked up the phone and dialed the number of her old mentor, Carmen. "Hey, Carmen, I need to talk to you," Sophia said when the call was answered. Carmen's voice was familiar and comforting. "Of course. What's going on?" "I don't know. I just feel like everything is moving so fast. I'm not sure I can keep up. There's always another challenge, another decision to make, and I don't know if I'm doing enough. I'm constantly second-guessing myself." There was a long pause on the other end of the line before Carmen spoke. "Sophia, I remember when you were just starting out. You've always been determined, always committed to doing the right thing. But even the strongest people need support. You can't do everything on your own, and it's okay to take a step back sometimes and breathe." Sophia chuckled softly, feeling the warmth of Carmen's words. "I guess I'm just scared of losing everything. I've worked so hard to build this, and I want to make sure it lasts." "You're not going to lose it, Sophia. Your business is built on a foundation of integrity. You've already proven that. The only thing you need to worry about is staying true to yourself. Don't lose sight of why you started all of this. You built this business to make a difference, and that's something nobody can take away from you." Sophia felt a sense of calm wash over her. "Thank you, Carmen. I really needed to hear that." As the years went on, Sophia found herself mentoring a new generation of young entrepreneurs, just as Carmen had mentored her. One of her most promising mentees was Maya, a young woman from a small town who had always dreamed of starting her own business, but didn't have the resources to do so. Maya had come to Sophia through the Empowerment Initiative, and after several months of mentorship, Sophia could see that Maya had the same passion and drive that she had once had. It was clear that she was ready to take the next step. One afternoon, Maya sat down with Sophia at a local cafe. "I've been thinking about something," Maya said, nervous yet determined. "I'm ready to open my own restaurant. I've saved enough money, and I've got my business plan all figured out. But I want to do it the way you did it, by focusing on people first, building a community, and making sure it's inclusive. I just don't know if I'm ready." Sophia smiled and placed a reassuring hand on Maya's. "You're more ready than you think. The hardest part is taking that first step. And remember, there's no one right way to do it. Build it the way that feels true to you." And if you ever need anything, you know I'm here." With Sophia's guidance, Maya went on to open her own restaurant, following the same principles of inclusion and transparency that Sophia had implemented in her business. She maintained close contact with Sophia, reaching out for advice when needed and celebrating each milestone along the way. As Sophia watched Maya's business grow, she felt an immense sense of pride. Her legacy was no longer just in the restaurants she had built, but in the ripple effect of the entrepreneurs she had mentored and inspired. Maya was proof that the next generation of leaders was ready to continue the work she had started. As Sophia's company continued to grow, her role evolved. She was no longer just managing day-to-day operations. Instead, she had become an industry thought leader, a speaker at conferences, and a global ambassador for ethical business practices. One morning, as Sophia sat on a panel at a prestigious business conference, she looked out at the crowd of young entrepreneurs and business leaders. They were eager to hear her speak about leadership, inclusivity, and the future of business. "Success isn't just about building a profitable business," Sophia said into the microphone. "It's about building something that makes a difference in the world. We have the power to create businesses that don't just survive, they thrive because they help others thrive. That's the future of business, and I'm so proud to be a part of it." As she left the stage to a standing ovation, Sophia felt a deep sense of fulfillment. Her vision had come to life in ways she had never imagined, and the future was brighter than ever. As Sophia's restaurant chain continued to expand across the United States, an unexpected opportunity arose. During a trip to Europe for a culinary conference, Sophia was approached by a group of investors from several countries. They were interested in taking her restaurant brand global. The proposal was both exciting and daunting. It would mean not just opening restaurants abroad, but also adapting her inclusive model to different cultures, managing international teams, and navigating the complexities of different regulatory environments. "I've always dreamed of taking this brand global," Sophia said to Andre, her right-hand man and the head of operations. "But this feels like such a huge leap. We'd be going from managing a handful of locations to potentially hundreds." Andre looked thoughtful. "It's a big step for sure, but you've built something that's already proven itself here. The foundation is solid. If we approach this right, we can take everything we've learned and apply it abroad." Sophia was still hesitant. The idea of international expansion meant leaving behind the tight-knit, community-focused model she had worked so hard to cultivate. There were risks, both financial and cultural, that could jeopardize the company's values. But the investors were persistent. They saw the potential in Sophia's brand not just for profit, but for making a positive cultural impact in other countries. They wanted to bring her message of inclusivity and transparency to global markets. After weeks of deliberation, Sophia decided to take the plunge. She and her team would spend the next year carefully researching international markets, focusing on countries where their values could resonate. They started with Europe and parts of Asia, determining the best locations to introduce their restaurants while ensuring their message would be understood and embraced. Months later, Sophia stood in the bustling streets of Paris, watching as the first international location of her restaurant opened its doors. The line outside stretched around the block as people eagerly waited to see what Sophia's brand was all about. This was a monumental moment, not just for her business, but for the vision she had held onto since the very beginning. The first few days were filled with excitement, but also with challenges. Language barriers, cultural misunderstandings, and differences in consumer preferences made it clear that there was no such thing as smooth sailing when expanding abroad. One particular incident stood out. During a dinner rush, a French customer became upset when the server couldn't explain the menu item in perfect French. The customer complained loudly to the manager, questioning why the staff didn't speak fluent French and accusing the restaurant of being unprofessional. Sophia had been watching from the sidelines, But when she saw the situation escalating, she quickly intervened. She walked over to the table and apologized for the misunderstanding. "I understand your frustration," she said in carefully spoken French, "but we're committed to providing a diverse and inclusive experience, which includes hiring people from all walks of life. We're happy to have you here, and I want to make sure we accommodate you in any way we can." The customer, somewhat taken aback by Sophia's genuine approach, softened. "I didn't realize. Thank you for explaining." Sophia smiled warmly. "Of course. If you need anything, please let us know. Our goal is to create an environment where everyone feels comfortable." The customer's attitude shifted entirely, and by the end of the meal, he was chatting happily with staff and thanking Sophia for her patience. It was a small victory, but it reinforced Sophia's belief in the importance of maintaining her company's core values, no matter where they were located. As the weeks went by, the international locations began to settle in, with Sophia's message of inclusivity gaining traction. The staff, despite early challenges, embraced the diversity of the team, and customers started to see what made Sophia's restaurants different. It was a difficult process, but Sophia knew that every step forward was part of building something truly global, a tone business that celebrated diversity and transparency across borders. As Sophia's professional life soared to new heights, her personal life began to face some turbulence. One evening, she received a call from her mother. Sophia had always been close to her parents, and when her mother's voice trembled on the phone, Sophia's heart sank. "Mom, what's wrong?" she asked, her tone filled with concern. Her mother explained that her father's health had taken a sudden turn for the worse. He had been diagnosed with a chronic illness that would require extensive care and attention. Sophia felt a wave of guilt wash over her. She was thousands of miles away, leading a business that had grown beyond anything she could have imagined. But her father, the man who had always supported her dreams, now needed her. Her mind raced. She had always been a workaholic, throwing herself into her business with such passion and focus that she rarely took a break. But now, the importance of family was pressing on her heart in a way it hadn't before. "I need to come home," Sophia said, her voice breaking. "I'll be there as soon as I can." Sophia immediately arranged for her responsibilities in Europe to be handled by her trusted team. She flew back to the U.S., where she spent the following weeks by her father's side, supporting her mother and helping to manage his medical care. The experience was a painful reminder that while success in business was fulfilling, family would always come first. It was during this time that Sophia realized how much she had neglected her personal life in pursuit of her business goals. Being away from her father made her reflect on her own priorities, and she promised herself that when the time came for her to return to work, she would find a healthier balance between family and business. During her time at home with her family, Sophia spent long nights talking with her father about his life and their shared experiences. He had always been proud of her achievements, but had never fully understood the weight she carried. Now, in his time of need, they shared an understanding that transcended business success. One evening, as Sophia sat beside her father's bed, he took her hand in his and said, "I'm proud of everything you've built, Sophia, but I want you to remember this. Your legacy isn't just in your businesses. It's in the love you give to the people around you. Never forget to nurture the relationships that matter most." Sophia's eyes filled with tears. She had been so focused on building a business that she had sometimes lost sight of the things that truly mattered. Her father's words resonated deeply, and she made a promise to him that she would take a step back when needed, to ensure her legacy wasn't just about financial success, but about being there for the people who loved her. After a few weeks, her father's condition stabilized, and Sophia returned to her business with a renewed perspective. She implemented changes to her schedule, making more time for family visits and personal reflection, ensuring she could continue to lead her business without sacrificing the relationships that were most important. As Sophia's restaurant empire grew, it became clear that the time had come to start thinking about the next chapter of her life. She had built a company that represented her values, but now, with a growing family and a desire to continue her philanthropic efforts, Sophia knew she couldn't do it all on her own forever. She began to groom her successor. After careful consideration, she chose Leah, her head of marketing and one of her longest-serving employees. Leah had been with the company from its early days, and Sophia had always admired her creativity, leadership, and dedication to the brand's core mission. One evening, as they sat in Sophia's office overlooking the city, Sophia turned to Leah and said, "I think you're ready. You've been with me every step of the way, and I can see how you care about this business. I want you to take over as CEO." Leah was taken aback. "Sophia, I don't know if I'm ready for that." Sophia smiled. "You're more ready than you think. You've got the vision, the passion, and the integrity that this company needs. You've seen what it takes, and now it's your turn to lead it into the next phase." With Sophia's mentorship and support, Leah gradually transitioned into her new role as CEO. Sophia remained involved, guiding her from behind the scenes and helping her navigate the complexities of the role. But Leah's leadership style was already shaping the company's future, and Sophia felt confident that the values she had worked so hard to instill would live on. As she stepped back from day-to-day operations, Sophia was filled with pride. She had built something that would last, a business that would continue to impact the world, guided by the principles of inclusivity, integrity, and transparency.